The man standing on stage today is a shadow of the teenager who once stood before Simon Cowell. But this radical shift was born from a desperate struggle that almost ended his career. For years, the headlines surrounding Jonathan Antoine focused on one thing: his unrecognizable appearance. It is no secret that the tenor has undergone a massive physical transformation, shedding over 5 stone through what he describes as a grueling process of self-discipline. However, the true story isn't about the weight itself, but the terrible state Jonathan found himself in during his early years in America. Away from his support system in Essex, the singer admitted to losing control, spiraling into a lifestyle defined by convenience and a total lack of health focus. He recently revealed that he lacked the discipline to manage his own well-being, leading to a period of deep physical and mental exhaustion that left him nearly unable to perform. The shocking photos that circulate today aren't just the result of a trendy diet. They are the evidence of a man who had to claw his way back from the brink of a total health collapse. He started with light exercise, specifically a rigid 10,000 steps a day goal, sometimes packing back and forth in a small hotel room just to hit his target while on the road. This wasn't a celebrity makeover for the sake of vanity. It was a survival tactic to reclaim a life that was slipping through his fingers. As he prepares for his 2026 tour, fans are witnessing the result of a 4-year battle against his own habits, a journey that has left him feeling stronger and healthier than in a decade. He's been candid about the internal demons he had to fight to put down the fast food and pick up a life of longevity. But while his body was changing, a much deeper realization was about to surface, one that would make him question every social interaction he's ever had. Imagine reaching your late 20s only to realize that every social struggle and every moment of feeling different was actually the result of a condition your doctors missed for nearly 3 decades. In 2022, shortly after his 27th birthday, Jonathan Antoine received a clinical diagnosis of autism, a revelation he has only recently begun to discuss with raw, unfiltered honesty in his 2026 interviews. To his fans, Jonathan was simply quirky or eccentric, but to the man himself, life had been a scary daydream of confusion and sensory overload. He described the diagnosis as a recontextualization of a life already lived, a phrase that highlights the haunting nature of realizing your entire history was filtered through a lens you didn't know you had. Jonathan has spoken about the sheer exhaustion of trying to navigate a neurotypical world while living in what he calls his own little matrix behind his eyes. This wasn't just a labels and folders medical update. It was a profound shift that explained his deep-seated anxieties and his history of being reclusive. He candidly shared that for his entire life, there was a constant feeling of not belonging anywhere, which led to significant mental health hurdles. The diagnosis allowed him to finally start living because it removed the shame associated with his social difficulties. However, this clarity didn't come without its own set of rumors. Speculation began to swirl about how this would affect his live performances and whether he would ever return to the high-pressure world of international touring given his sensory sensitivities. Rather than shrinking away, Jonathan used this atypicality as a superpower, infusing his new album Speaking to You with a level of emotional transparency he previously found impossible to express. Yet, as he finally began to understand the inner workings of his mind, a series of devastating personal losses would threaten to silence his voice once again during his most vulnerable moment. While the public celebrated his return to the recording studio, Jonathan was privately mourning the loss of the only 2 constants in his life since he was a young boy. Music has always been Jonathan's sanctuary, but his latest work is carrying a weight that many listeners may not fully grasp without knowing the tragedy behind the scenes. In a recent, heartbreaking update, the singer revealed the passing of his beloved cats, Polly and Pandora. To some, this might seem like a small detail, but for a man who describes himself as having spent 2/3 of his life with these animals, the loss was catastrophic. They were with him during the BGT madness, the split with his singing partner, and the quiet years of isolation. Jonathan admitted that he cried every day while recording his 2026 album, but he chose to funnel that raw grief into his vocals. This period of mourning coincided with his collaboration with producer Leo Z in what he calls a homegrown labor of love. The rumors that Jonathan had lost his spark were quickly debunked when he explained that his new single, All of Me, was actually a tribute to the endurance of love in the face of loss. He described the recording sessions as a way to cross the rainbow bridge emotionally, finding solace in the fact that he could sing these songs for the companions he lost. This era marks a departure from his pure opera roots, moving into a more vulnerable crossover sound that mirrors his personal evolution. It is a bold, exposed version of Jonathan Antoine that doesn't hide behind the grandiosity of the genre, but instead uses the cracks in his heart to reach his audience in a way he never could as a teenager. But as he finds his solo footing in this new era, one nagging question continues to haunt every interview. What really happened with the girl who started the journey by his side? The £1 million contract was signed, and the world was at their feet. But behind the scenes, the most famous duo in classical crossover was falling apart at the seams. The name Jonathan and Charlotte is etched into the minds of millions, but the reality of their relationship in 2026 is far colder than the harmony of their voices once suggested. Since their professional split in 2014, speculation has run rampant about a bitter feud or a betrayal orchestrated by record executives. While Simon Cowell famously told Jonathan to dump Charlotte during their very first audition, the truth of their separation was much more nuanced and seemingly permanent. Jonathan has recently admitted that he has lost contact with Charlotte Jaconelli entirely, revealing that they haven't spoken in years. This shocking distance between two people who shared such a life-altering experience has left fans desperate for a reunion, but Jonathan's stance remains firm. Their paths are fundamentally separate. While he has pursued a serious classical career, Charlotte moved toward musical theater, a creative divide that eventually made their partnership untenable. Despite the rumors of a rift, Jonathan maintains a level of respect for their shared history, even suggesting he might be open to a reunion in 20 years' time. But for now, the silence between them is absolute. This lack of communication has fueled speculation that the split was more contentious than the polite press releases of 2014 suggested, with some insiders hinting at creative stifling. For Jonathan, stepping out of Charlotte's shadow wasn't just a career move. It was a survival tactic to find his own identity. This search for a new identity has led him to some of the most unexpected corners of the globe, where he is currently being treated like a king, while being largely ignored by the mainstream British press. While the UK media often focuses on his past, Jonathan Antoine is currently being treated like a head of state in countries half a world away. If you want to find Jonathan Antoine in 2026, you might have to look further than the London stage. In a surprising turn of events, the tenor has found a second life as a global superstar in regions like Vietnam and Egypt. He recently shared details of a private performance in Ho Chi Minh City, where he was treated like absolute royalty, an experience that left a profound mark on his heart and changed his perspective on fame. This international success comes at a time when many of his BGT contemporaries have faded into total obscurity. His recent invitation to perform for the legendary Egyptian composer Omar Khayyam has solidified his status as a world-class talent who is no longer dependent on the British reality TV machine. This shift to the global stage has sparked rumors that Jonathan is done with the UK music scene, but his upcoming March 2026 album release suggests he still wants to conquer his home turf. He is currently juggling his classical roots with a new passion for voice acting in video games and an extensive collection of guitars, proving that his eccentric side is finally being allowed to flourish without judgment. The Jonathan Antoine of 2026 is a man of contradictions, a classically trained tenor who loves heavy metal, a reclusive autistic man who performs for thousands, and a survivor of a weight loss journey that nearly broke him. As he prepares to launch Speaking to You, the question isn't whether he can still sing. It's whether the world is finally ready to hear the man, not just the voice of a reality show contestant. He has proven that he can survive the industry's harshest critics and emerge as a self-made icon. The journey of Jonathan Antoine is a testament to the fact that the most shocking transformations are often the ones that happen within the mind and soul. He has navigated the treacherous waters of early fame, handled a life-changing medical diagnosis with incredible grace, and found a way to turn his deepest personal grief into a new era of music. As we look toward his 2026 releases, one thing is certain. Jonathan is no longer the shy boy waiting for a judge's approval. He is an artist in full control of his own narrative. But after everything he's been through, the weight loss, the diagnosis, and the decade of silence with his former partner, one question remains for the fans. Do you think Jonathan's best work is still ahead of him, or has his transformation changed his iconic sound too much for the traditionalists to handle?